This is James Lutz for Round Eight Boxing. Delighted to be joined with Robert Diaz. Robert, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, James. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure as always. I wanted to get you on because I saw on your social media posts you're out in Saudi for the Canelo versus Scull fight week. And I just wanted to get your thoughts, first of all, on Saudi Arabia being sort of a new hub of boxing and what it's like to see and be involved in the fight week out there.
Well, it's first time here. Obviously, it's something new for me personally. So far, what I've experienced has been great. I mean, um, the hospitality, like it's very different. It's not what we're used to traditionally as a fan or as someone in boxing with the masses, whether it's America or whether it's the UK. But I think everything at the beginning and something new, it's like that. It takes over time for it to grow, and not just boxing, just anything in general. But obviously, it's a great start. Many years ago, when Vegas started, whether it was with the casinos or live entertainment, including boxing, whoever would have thought that a desert, in the middle of nowhere, so hot, could become the capital of world boxing. And years later, a friend of mine, a promoter, said, if Vegas could do it, why can't I do it here in Cancun, which is beaches and beauty and paradise? And he turned Cancun into a very hot bed for boxing in Mexico. So I think now we're seeing the evolution of on the other side. And as long as we get the eyes and the views and the right fights, I think it's great for boxing. Anytime something new pops up, if it's going to benefit the fighters, benefit the sport, you got to applaud it. As long as it's maintained.
You mentioned as long as it's good for boxing, and I want to mention Turkey Al Sheikh and Riyadh Season. And since they've started in boxing, the fights are being made that the fans want to see. You know, the best versus the best, these 50-50 fights. The matchmaking seems to be exactly what the fans are looking for. And that's only got to be a positive for the sport, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It goes to prove, for years you hear, and a lot of times what's bad and it hurts is you hear it from within that same circle. And what I mean by that is reporters or within boxing people, the industry is, oh, boxing's dead, boxing's dead. Instead of promoting boxing's alive. How many times have we heard, oh, this is the end, it's over. Boxing is alive and kicking as better than ever. Uh, but the key is the best fighting the best. When you put on great fights, the world will watch. What's happened is through the years, it became so much of a business more than the sport itself. It's always been prize fighting. It's always been, but many years ago, in an era that I grew up in, I loved it, and I still go back to reference it a lot. Is the '80s? Those fighters from the '80s. Of course, it was always about money and make sure they get paid. That's how they take care of their families. But the best wanted to fight the best. Sugar Ray Leonard fought Hearns, fought Hagler, fought Duran, fought Benitez. I mean, he fought them all. Did he take losses? Yes. But we still remember those fights as classic fights of great fights. When you think of, and personally, when I think of Hearns versus Hagler, Hagler versus Hearns, I don't really focus on, oh, yeah, but Hagler won that fight. I focus on, we saw three of the best rounds we've ever seen in our life. So it shows that boxing today is alive and kicking as long as we do the right fights. And to his credit, obviously at what price, but he's putting on some of the most entertaining fights. And at least the names are fighting each other. When we saw Bivol versus Beterbiev, and it was such a good competitive fight, and we knew going in, when you had that level of fighters, it was going to be, it was guaranteed not to be a miss. But right away we saw the rematch. And through history, neither fighter will want to fight each other until 2 or 3 years from now. And sometimes those rematches don't live up because they're past that time that they should have happened. And I think in this particular case, them fighting right away, wow, that was surprising. But the outcome was we got another very competitive fight. And now we're going into a third. I mean, yes, that's all hats off, amazing. And we got to enjoy the moment. That's another thing in boxing is we're too steps. We jump the gun right away to say, okay, but are we going to get this fight? Are we going to let's enjoy the moment? And the moment right now is great. It's we're seeing some of the best fights.
But you make a really good point there about the rematches being almost instant rematches. You mentioned there Bivol and Beterbiev, Usyk, Fury. Even recently we saw Eubank, Benn, and they're already talking about a rematch immediately in September. Is that clever business minds from Turkey there to get these on straight away, knowing that now is the time to strike whilst iron's hot as such?
It's not traditional because again, in the eye or in the mind of a promoter, it's a great fight, but let's build a rematch, to make it even bigger. But what happens along the way sometimes is one of these guys gets injured or retires or gets beaten, and that rematch gets killed. If this was that good, now, and if you mentioned Eubanks and Benn, there's two different avenues you can take. Okay, it was a very good, entertaining fight, a tough fight for both guys. Because they're not in the same natural weight class. Personally, I would say, Ben, you proved that you're a warrior. You proved you had the heart. You dared to be great. You dared to jump up 2 weight classes and compete with a bigger man. Nothing else to prove. Let's go back down to your natural weight class and do your thing. Try to go win a world title and become a world champion. And Eubanks, you won. You got the glory. You got the victory. Now go on and conquer your weight division into bigger fights. That fight, that rematch will always be there. You could do if they both lose tomorrow to their next fights, you could still go back and do that rematch, months later, and it's still going to be that civil war, that bad blood, that entertaining fight because they'll both give it its all because of family history, because it's the rematch. So I would take a different avenue at this moment for both of them to go and conquer bigger and better things.
Now, do you know, I absolutely agree as well. I think we saw in that fight how tired they became, and that was because of the weights. Whether Eubank was drained too much and obviously Connor carrying the extra weight, it it made it an exciting fight. But like you say, I mean, again, even in September, you're talking about Eubank still trying to get it down again. The older he gets, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get to 160. Just whilst we're obviously talking about Canelo as well today, Eubank Canelo, that's a fight that's always been spoken about. Is that a fight you'd like to see in the future, potentially 160 or 165?
I think so. I think now with this type of victory, obviously Eubanks can raise his hand and say, look, I was just in a big entertainment fight. Saul has been a fighter that has always said, I want to fight around the world. And look, proof is, next few days he'll be fighting in Saudi Arabia. Whoever would have thought of that? Obviously, this is a huge opportunity, a huge moment for the sport of boxing, for Canelo's career, and also showing that with the mindset and the when you want to do something, you can achieve it. And that goes to obviously with the promotion being done here. But I think that's a fight that wow, imagine uh, and as a fan, I'm saying imagine Canelo in London, in Wembley, in one of these big areas, and that only certain fighters can do this, and obviously Canelo's one of them that can go around the world and fill up stadiums and put on big events, not only in Mexico or Las Vegas or in America. So that would be huge. And now with this kind of performance on Ben, obviously he Eubanks now has a reason to raise his hand. Before that, it's like okay, but you know, but coming off a win like this in a big event like this, where the atmosphere was amazing, now it's like okay, wait a minute, you should be able to raise your hand.
Talk to me about, also you mentioned the Canelo, he's got that star quality, the star power. He can go anywhere in the world, as you say, and sell out a stadium. He has that X factor, let's say. Talk to me about the pressures of having an X factor, the pressure of being a pound for pound great. You've certainly been in boxing a long time. You've gone all around the world with the likes of Jorge Linares. Talk to me about the pressures on a fighter to perform when they've got that star quality or the pressure of a star quality.
You know, when you're a fighter of that magnitude, it's because it didn't happen overnight. You've reached it because of your performances, because of it's been experienced that got you there. So every time you step into ring, there's pressure, especially with fighters of that level of competitiveness. There's the pressure of I got to perform, you know, to my standards. I can't, go in there and think about a lot. With Canelo, he's been doing it so long. The experience is there. Um, I see it just right now personally. His demeanor, he's relaxed. It's just I'm not saying it's just another fight because every fight's so important in his career that he's there always as because of his competitive nature to win. But he's so relaxed in the inside that's his office. That ring is where he's so relaxed in there. So he's fought every single style out there. He's fought everybody out there. So it's basically just another day in the office. So yes, I don't think there's added pressure at all.
You mentioned he's done it for a long time. His pro debut was at 15 years old over in Mexico, so and that's against grown men. So he's, like you say, he's grown up essentially all of his adult life with this pressure and being a fighter. I suppose, like I say, over time that pressure wears off, and it's just the norm, I suppose. For you, in terms of, you mentioned there his demeanor this week, he's chilled, he's relaxed. Away from the fighter, what is Canelo Alvarez like as a person?
At a very young age, something that always stuck up to me or stood out to me was a very mature young man. Um, and in all aspects, in demeanor, in talking, in seeing the future, basically what he wanted. What surprises me the most is, and we don't traditionally see this, is a fighter of his level that's reached the pinnacle, reached Mount Everest to maintain this long, to still have the love, the desire. It's very hard when you've reached the mountaintop to still want to go in there and do a full camp, 10 weeks, sparring, hundreds of rounds in each camp, getting up in the morning and running. It's that saying, if you sleep in silk pajamas, it's very hard to wake up in the morning. And yet, fight after fight after fight, you see that same desire, which again, it's not norm. He's quite an exception when it comes to um, still having that love for the sport and the love for building and continue building. Because to be honest, personally, I've seen so many fighters that either lose ground and with that cut corners and end up losing fights or get to the point where I've made it. I don't want this anymore because I mean, at the end of the day, we're not built to go in there and get our heads punched, right? Our beat up and everything like that. So, but I still see it. I mean, just the mere fact of not seeing, okay, this is one of the last ones or anything, no indication of, you know, we're seeing the last. No, there's still a lot of uh, gold that you hear and see and know that he has in his own mindset of still to achieve. So it's incredible out of a fighter of his magnitude, of his status, to still see this.
In terms of the Mexican greatest of all time, he's mentioned within the top, probably the top two of Julio Cesar Chavez. If he continues with this hunger or desire to continue doing what he's doing and to still continue doing what he has done the last 5, 10 years, could he overtake Chavez as the number one Mexican fighter ever, in your opinion?
It's hard to say because look, one thing that Chavez has is he has a spot in every Mexican's heart, right? But taking that aside, you in the past when it was Chavez, you always compared Chavez with Salvador Sanchez, and it was hard to not compare. But Salvador Sanchez, we never realized how great he was because he was cut short because of his tragic accident and ending. But I think today, one, we have to see how his career, Canelo's career, ends to compare because being active still there's questions of how it ends. Does it end with a bunch of losses? Does it end with continuous victories? But I think it's very close. I think it's very close because what he's achieved, uh, it's going to be very, very hard to even compare. And if you see the whole spectrum, people say because you're going to have the people that support and love and the haters always on both sides, both fighters or any fighter you mentioned. People seem to forget that Julio, as great as he was, and we love him, and he's, yes, today he's considered the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. Julio had in between his big fights, there was fights with guys with records that you would like never believe. If Canelo did it today, they'd say, how is he fighting this guy? But it was in between, so it was okay. It was these 10 rounders, it was okay. Canelo, for such a young age, and it's not even now, it's a few years back. I don't know of any fighter today worldwide that would even have any close to his resume, at such a young age. I mean, we have fighters out there that haven't achieved what he has, and they're much older than him, so early on, he was fighting everybody out there, for people to, oh, he's ducking this guy, he's ducking that. There was fights I remember saying, shouldn't take this fight. And it took him. He's fought everybody. In his era, there isn't a guy he hasn't fought. Now, they'll always come up with somebody, fought Triple G 3 times. Now they're saying, oh, he won't fight Benavides. He fought Bivol. I mean, he's fought everybody out there. But it's the thing that, again, back to boxing where, but he won't do this and he won't do that. They're never happy. And that's why I always say enjoy the moment, because once it's gone, people are going to say, wow, I missed that. And I think, can he become the greatest? I believe based on, there's always going to be favorites, but based on numbers, absolutely. Absolutely. To answer that question, yes, it's like American football. People say Tom Brady's the greatest football quarterback in history. Okay. Personally, I think it was Joe Montana. But if you go by all the statistics and everything, all the numbers, there's no question it was Tom Brady. So I think when you add it all up at the end, we have to compare once it's over. But when you add it all up, title defenses, weight classes, attendances, numbers, financially, everything. Yes, I mean, it's a different era. Everybody in its own has to be respected. But at the end of the day, when you have to say who is number one, I think it will be.
Just finally, just want to mention a question about the fight of the weekend against William Scull. There's been rumours from Nigel Benn. Obviously, William Scull sparred Conor Benn, and Nigel had said that Scull quit midway through round 8 of sparring of a scheduled 10 spar. Is that something to look into, or is it something that's not really anything that people pay attention to in terms of position like Canelo?
You always hear that in every, not in every big fight, but in every fight, there's, especially recently with social media and everything, you start hearing rumors that, oh, he got dropped, he got not. Professionally, you can't fall into listening or hearing that. Um, they mean nothing. You got to remember in a camp, 8 weeks, sparring 3 times a week, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days. You can't be consistently dominating every time you go in there because sometimes your body has had so much work, it's tired. It's sparring. You can't take anything away from a sparring session. How many times can we look at a good example this weekend? Ryan is fighting Rolly, and there's sparring sessions there that we've seen from years ago where Rolly put hands on Ryan. Does that mean that's what we're going to see in the fight? I don't think so. That was a sparring session. You learn too. Another good example is Lamont Roach and Tank. They know each other from 2 fights as young kids, but they also know each other from sparring. And look who we saw in a fight. If that would have been an indication, look, no, they know each other. That's different because they were fighting each other. They sparred each other. In this particular case, did Nigel, and he's a father, obviously he has to throw flowers towards his son. But let me ask you, if they sparred 10 times, he mentions the one. How come he didn't? If there would have been no one, would he even mention that they sparred if Scull would have had the better of Connor? He probably wouldn't have ever even mentioned that they were sparring. But he had that one chance to say, oh, yeah, my son put hands on him. And do we know that if Scull was coming towards the tail end of his camp, he's tired, he's exhausted, he's cutting weight? Obviously, Nigel or Connor's not cutting weight. He's actually probably, as he's training, gaining weight and eating, so he's physically strong. So you have to find out what happened that day. Was it one punch? Did he quit because of the punch, or did he quit because like, hey, I'm tired, guys, I need a break? So no, I think first of all, what makes Skull so dangerous is a little bit of the unknown. Two, obviously, he comes from a school of boxing that's very complicated, very difficult with the Cuban style. Naturally, that's what a lot of people forget. He is the physically bigger, taller, longer guy. And that in itself is a phenom that people don't give Canelo the credit that he's fighting outside of his comfort zone. We've seen fighters in the past go up in weight, and as good as they are, they're not successful because they're too small. And Canelo's been doing that for years, fighting these bigger guys. And believe it or not, we don't see it as much, but it has to physically take its toll because you are fighting bigger guys that your punches might not be as effective as they should be. And their punches, even if they're not showing, because he does have one of the greatest chins that I've ever seen, but little by little, they take add some miles to the wear and tear.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, I want to thank you very much for your time. That's all the questions I had for you today. So I appreciate your time as always. Pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much, pal. It's all the best and enjoy the fights. It's going to be a great weekend.
Absolutely, I will do. Thank you very much.